If I asked you to guess which is the biggest video game company in the world, you'd probably think of Ubisoft or Rockstar Games behind big franchises like Assassin's Creed and Grand Theft Auto. But you would be so wrong. The company that I'm going to talk to you about overtook every one of its competitors and rose to being one of the best video game publishers in the world, both in terms of revenue and number of users. But this company attained this top position through some unconventional and some might say unethical techniques. It is alleged that they either blatantly copied ideas of smaller companies and put them out of business, or strategically invested in companies that stood in their way. This is the story of Tencent, a company that has a monopoly in one of the world's biggest industries, video games. The year is 1949. The Great Civil War has ended and China has come out victorious under the dictatorship of Mao Zedong, a strong believer in communism. Communism is a system where there is no private ownership of anything, lands, factories or businesses. Instead, the government owns everything and the people have to work to get paid equally, even if one works harder than the rest. After the war, Mao Zedong proclaims himself as the supreme leader of China. He then realizes that the country is politically weak and lacked industries. So he starts an industrialization movement called the Great Leap Forward, in the hope of modernizing China to look good in the eyes of the rest of the world. This proved to be too ambitious a task to achieve in just 15 years, as 90% of the population were farmers. They were asked to part with their land and also actively participate in this rapid industrialization drive. However, factories could manufacture only substandard products since the farmers were not basically equipped to do the job. Due to rampant corruption at various levels, people had to give up the grain they produced in their farms, and as a result, millions starved to death. All this time, no help was taken from any foreign country. Whoever opposed this either suffered capital punishment or were sent to labor camps. This went on till Mao Zedong's demise in 1976. That's when the people truly got a break and China slowly started developing. Foreign companies started investing in China, setting up businesses. It was at this juncture that the US saw a huge potential to market video games, seeing that the world's most populated country had never heard of anything like it. They shipped arcade machines to China with games like Pong and Pac-Man. This became a huge hit. By 1983, the Chinese economy had significantly improved and saw advancements in both tech and the video game industry. But just when all seemed to be going well, the video game industry crashed in the US due to market saturation and poor quality games, thus bringing arcade games to an abrupt end.
ファミリーコンピューターに光線銃登場。コントローラーを電子銃に持ち替えてワイルドダックハント。一人はコントローラーでカモを操り、一人はハンター。
This is when a Japanese company called Nintendo seized the opportunity and released its own home gaming console to the global market. For the first time, people were introduced to truly exceptional games like Super Mario and Legends of Zelda. The Nintendo Famicom was a runaway hit globally, but in China, the government imposed a 130% markup plus taxes on importing gaming consoles from Japan. As a result of this, multiple black markets mushroomed. Games and console smuggling, piracy, and sale of duplicate consoles became rampant. By now, video games had become an integral part of the lives of the people of China. Kids of all ages had easy access to consoles and games. Naturally, this resulted in a huge spike in addiction levels. Major Chinese media houses published articles describing video games as digital heroin. This got the attention of the Chinese government, and in the year 2000, the State Council passed a bill banning gaming consoles and arcade machines. This led to the birth of the multi-billion-dollar market of PC and mobile gaming. Pony Ma and a few other friends from business school started a tech company called Tencent Inc. in 1998. Very soon, they released their first product, an identical copy of the then popular messaging software ICQ. They called it OICQ or Open Source ICQ, meaning it was completely free and people only had to pay to customize their avatar. The original creator, based out of Israel, filed a lawsuit against Tencent and obviously won the case. So Pony Ma had to change the name from OICQ to QQ. Though the business wasn't profitable in the first few years, millions of users found out about Tencent and started using QQ. Pony Ma had tasted success through plagiarism. This process continued for a few more years. During this time, his company allegedly made copies of games created by smaller companies, forcing these companies to go out of business. Year 2011. For the first time, Tencent created a groundbreaking original product called WeChat. WeChat was a mobile app that could hold multiple apps ranging from social media, messaging, payments, games, and entertainment. Literally every app imaginable running from one single app. This was a revelation. Millions of people were drawn towards the app and turned it into a major success. But in the same year, the government summoned Tencent and few other companies and made them sign a joint declaration stating internet companies must strengthen their self-management, self-restraint, and strict self-discipline. This meeting completely changed the fabric of how personal privacy functioned in China and around the world. WeChat suddenly became a platform that was controlled by the government. Allegedly, users were monitored, their personal messages were read, people promoting Western ideals were blocked, not allowed to freely express themselves, people were fined, even imprisoned if the government felt that a user's ideas were anti-national. Any news that was felt unsuitable for their image was simply scrubbed off the internet. Realizing this is a game of pure politics, Pony Ma went along with all of it. So when a reporter questioned him about the censorship, he simply said, "Lots of people think that they can speak out and that they can be irresponsible. I think that's wrong. There should be order if the development of the cyber world is to be sustainable." As per a study, all of this stems from the fact that the people of China never like to be seen in a negative light. They are truly embarrassed if they are not portrayed as being the perfect nation. Mao Zedong played a major role in the cultivation of this ideology, where projecting the nation in a positive light comes before everything else. In 2015, the Chinese gaming console ban was lifted, but by then, mobile gaming industry was booming, with every kid hooked onto the mobile. During this time, Tencent also launched a game called Honor of Kings, which was a rip-off of a popular game called League of Legends. Honor of Kings became the biggest game in China in terms of revenue and monthly users. This naturally came to the attention of the government and media. The government found the game to be too addictive for kids and that it lacked Chinese cultural sensibilities. Tencent was made to cough up billions in fines. The company was also forced to sign an agreement that stated that the government would own part of the company. Many negative articles were written about Tencent in magazines and blogs. The company's stock fell and losses worth billions resulted. But Pony Ma was a smart player. He never spoke against the government as he knew the big risks involved. Losing so much money did not affect Tencent badly either, as Pony Ma had smartly invested in around 800 of the world's biggest tech and gaming companies, fetching him big returns no matter what. Here are a few that you might know. 100% stake in Riot Games, the creators of League of Legends. 40% in Epic Games, known for the game Fortnite. 5% in Ubisoft, 5% in Activision, and 13.7% in Blue Hole Games, now known as Krafton. It's 2013. Brendan Green, an Irish gamer, decides to create a mod for a multiplayer game. He takes inspiration from Battle Royale, a Japanese movie hugely popular in the year 2000, and another movie, Hunger Games. Both movies were similar in that they were both based on a character who had to survive on the battlefield till he or she was the last one standing. So Brendan learns to program and creates the mod. This becomes a huge hit in his gaming community. It also catches the attention of Chang Kim, the CEO of South Korean gaming company called Krafton. Chang contacts Brendan and pitches his idea of creating a standalone battle royale game for PC, and that he wanted Brendan to be the creative director for the game. Brendan agrees, and the rest, as they say, is history. The duo named the game after Brendan's gaming ID that he has always used, PlayerUnknown. They called it PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, or PUBG in short. The game is then developed under Brendan's guidance and released in December 2017 as an early access test. The game turns out to be a runaway hit, setting a record of 3 million players on the very first day. Obviously, big companies were extremely eager to invest. And as you guessed it, Tencent was one of them. Tencent paid billions to own 13.7% of Krafton. In the very first month, Tencent proposed that they wanted to publish a mobile version of PUBG globally. Krafton agreed, and Tencent went on to seek permission from the Chinese government, but the government rejected it, saying the game was too violent, could cause addiction, and that it did not promote any Chinese values. So Tencent smartly changed the design slightly, removing any Western influences, and introduced artwork reflecting Chinese culture. To control addiction levels, they did 3 things prominently. 1. They made sure that users could sign in to the game only if they used their government-issued ID cards. 2. Users had to compulsorily declare their age. 3. The game could only be played for a specific period and would switch off on its own once the time was spent. Only then was the game approved by the government. Globally, the game was called PUBG and Game for Peace in China. It raked in billions of dollars in sales, with India being the leading revenue generator for the Chinese company Tencent. By 2020, India alone had contributed to Tencent revenue of approximately $1 billion. Around the same time though, India and other countries had found evidence that the game was transferring user data back to the Chinese government. The India-China border conflict was at its peak during this period, so the Indian government took the sudden decision of banning PUBG and 100 other Chinese mobile apps.
This evening, India banned 118 Chinese mobile applications. New Delhi said that the apps were quote-unquote prejudicial to the sovereignty and integrity of India, the defense of India, the security of state and public order.
In a way, this had a positive fallout. Usage levels fell. This was significant because as per reports, video game addiction levels had reached an all-time high by then due to PUBG. There were stories of how kids didn't do well in their exams because they were highly distracted by the game. There were also instances where they stole huge sums of money from their homes just to buy something in the game. But in China, Tencent had carefully created a completely customized game so such things never happen. Tencent was affected hugely by the ban as it suddenly lost major market like India. So they came up with an idea to republish the game by removing their name and adding their South Korean partner Krafton as the publisher. They made literally no change to the base game code, just like the Chinese version of Game for Peace. In August 2021, they re-released the game under Krafton Inc. and all we did was simply lap it up. A few weeks after the relaunch, it was discovered that user data was still being transferred to a server outside India, supposedly to a Singapore-based company called Proxima Beta, which is owned by Tencent. Krafton clarified that only data from the previous generation of the game was being transferred. However, there were doubts that the data was not just being transferred to Proxima Beta's server, but also to China Mobile Communications Corporation in Beijing, a mobile telecommunications enterprise believed to be controlled by the Chinese government. According to the United States Department of Defense, the company has links to the Chinese army. Upon questioning Krafton about this, one doesn't know if the Indian government has received a proper answer yet. Now, taking in all this information in one go might be a little hard for you guys, so you might have to rewatch this video. But when you finally manage to connect the dots and crack the puzzle, you'll find that all roads lead back to Tencent. But until then, I recommend you watch this video on social media addiction because it's easily one of my best videos. Alright, this is Parikshit signing off. Goodbye.